The space was softly illuminated, the quiet buzz of the cooling system mixing with the steady pulse in my chest. His fingers moved with purpose, their heat awakening parts of me that had long been numb. When his mouth grazed my throat, leaving a scorching path, my breathing faltered. I knew I shouldn't be here, shouldn't be allowing this, yet the jolt of excitement surging through me silenced any remorse. "This is new for me," I murmured, my tone unsteady but eager. He grinned, a self-assured curve of his lips, and drew nearer, his rich, smooth voice murmuring, "Don't worry, tonight's yours." Just as the tension threatened to spiral, let me interrupt for a moment. If you followed along this far, you're clearly hooked. Don't forget to like, share, and follow this channel for more tales like this. Believe me, things get even more intense. Now, let's rewind to the beginning. I'm an average woman, or so I believed until not long ago. Married for almost 10 years, my life with my husband, Mark, was safe, steady, and, if I'm honest, dull. Not that Mark isn't a decent man. He's the type many would consider a catch. But over time, the spark faded, leaving only monotony. Then came that pivotal evening with my friends, sipping Pinot Noir in Sarah's living room when the discussion took a surprising turn. "Ever been with a black man?" Jessica asked, her eyes gleaming with mischief. A brief hush fell before laughter broke out. "Jess, you're outrageous," Sarah scolded, though her expression hinted at interest. "I mean it," Jessica pressed. "Once you try it." She left the rest unsaid, her smirk speaking volumes. I joined in the laughter, but her words stuck with me. Jessica described it as the most electrifying, unforgettable night of her life. I pretended to shrug it off, yet her claims haunted me long after the jokes ended. That night, lying beside Mark, staring blankly at the ceiling, a persistent question crept in. What if? Weeks went by, but the thought wouldn't leave. I began noticing black men everywhere. The supermarket, the gym, even on TV. It was as if my mind had unlocked a door I couldn't shut. Then, I met him. Marcus, a marketing executive who sometimes worked with my company. From our first introduction, the pull between us was undeniable. Towering, with flawless dark skin and a grin that could melt anyone, his aura was magnetic. His voice alone sent tremors through me. Initially, our exchanges were strictly business, polite chats about projects. But beneath the surface, there was an unspoken tension, a silent recognition of something neither of us voiced. One day, after a meeting, Marcus stayed behind. "You're different," he said, his eyes holding mine. I forced a nervous laugh. "Different how?" "In the best way," he answered, his stare unwavering. My pulse spiked and I hurried away, equal parts thrilled and terrified. The moment replayed in my head for days. I knew I was towing a dangerous line, but the rush was addictive. For the first time in ages, I felt truly alive. I took a gamble. It began with a harmless text. "Hey, hope your day's good." Innocent, right? His reply was immediate, and soon we were messaging daily. The tone grew more intimate, more daring. He made me feel noticed, wanted, cherished in a way I'd forgotten. By the time he proposed coffee, I was already in too deep. The day we met at the cafe felt like stepping into another world, one where I wasn't a rule-following suburban wife, but a woman chasing forbidden excitement. I'd picked a secluded spot, miles from prying eyes. Marcus was waiting, his presence dominating the quiet corner. "You're gorgeous," he said, rising as I approached. His compliment sent heat flooding through me. I wasn't accustomed to such attention anymore, and the way he looked at me made me feel like the center of the universe. "Thanks," I mumbled, avoiding his gaze as I fumbled with the menu, my hands unsteady. We talked endlessly, the conversation shifting seamlessly from work to passions to private hopes. Marcus had a gift for putting me at ease, his velvety voice laced with wit and intellect. But beneath our casual banter lurked something far riskier. "So," he said, leaning in with a sly grin, "why'd you really say yes to this?" The question threw me and I stumbled over my words. I'm not sure," I think you are, he countered, his voice a low purr. My heartbeat stuttered, my cheeks burning. He wasn't wrong. I did know why I'd come. I'd crossed a line long before this meeting, and now I was teetering on the brink of something irreversible. That night I lay awake, his words looping in my mind, stirring desires I'd buried. I knew I should stop, retreat before it was too late. But the allure of the unknown, the promise of something wild and new, was impossible to resist. When Marcus texted again, I replied without hesitation. Our exchanges grew bolder, more heated. His flattering words set my heart racing, and I caught myself constantly checking my phone, craving his name on the screen. Let's do dinner, he proposed one night. And before logic could intervene, I agreed. The restaurant was elegant, dimly lit, the kind where couples exchanged secret smiles over flickering candles. I wore a dress I'd neglected for years, one that accentuated every curve. When Marcus spotted me, his eyes darkened, and he pulled me into an embrace that lasted a beat too long. You're stunning, he breathed, his voice heavy with admiration. The evening was flawless. Exquisite food, endless wine, and a connection that crackled between us. By dessert, I was lost in it. I could feel my resistance weakening, my defenses collapsing under his words. You know, he murmured, his fingers grazing mine lightly. I haven't been able to get you out of my head since we first met. My breath hitched, and for a second I was speechless. His intense stare, the heat of his skin against mine, was almost overwhelming. I shouldn't be here, I whispered, more to myself than to him. But you are, he replied, his voice soothing. And that tells me all I need to know. Driving home that night, my thoughts were a storm of conflicting emotions. Guilt, excitement, fear, and longing all clashing inside me, leaving me dizzy. I knew I was standing at the edge of something that could shatter my life as I knew it. Yet instead of retreating, I only wanted more. Late one Friday, his message lit up my phone. What are you doing right now? I stared at the screen, pulse racing as I scrambled for a reply. Upstairs, Mark was dozing in the den, the faint sounds of a football game and the occasional clink of his beer bottle drifting down. Not much, you? I typed, trying to sound casual despite my sweaty palms. Thinking about you. 3 words, simple, devastating, sent my stomach twisting and my heart pounding. Before I could second-guess myself, another text appeared. Let's meet. I hesitated. This wasn't coffee or dinner. This was different, and we both knew it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, torn between shame and hunger. Finally, I replied. Where? The spot he picked was hidden, a quiet bar in a part of town I never went to. I told Mark I was catching up with an old friend, a lie that slipped out far too easily. When I walked in, Marcus was already there, leaning against the bar with effortless ease. His face lit up when he saw me, that smile of his making my legs unsteady. You came, he said, his voice smooth and low. I shouldn't have, I answered, though the words rang hollow even to me. But you did, he countered, just like he had at dinner, and just like before, it undid me completely. We slid into a shadowy booth, the dim lighting wrapping around us like a secret. He ordered drinks, but I barely touched mine. The air between us was charged, the tension finally reaching its breaking point. At some point, I stopped resisting. I can't stop thinking about you, I confessed, my voice barely audible. His hand found mine, his fingers brushing against my skin, sending a shock through me. When I looked up, his gaze held mine. You don't have to, he said, firm yet tender. We left together, words unnecessary. My heart hammered as we walked to his car, fear and anticipation warring inside me. Are you sure about this? He asked, his tone serious but gentle. I nodded, my voice failing me. The motel was small, unremarkable, tucked away on a quiet street. Stepping inside, my nerves and excitement collided, leaving me lightheaded. He closed the door, and for a moment we just stood there, the weight of what we were about to do pressing down on us. Then he moved closer, his hands cradling my face before his lips met mine. The kiss was slow, deliberate, unlike anything I'd felt in years. His mouth was soft yet commanding, his hands warm as they slid to my waist, pulling me in. I melted against him, every doubt dissolving in the heat of the moment. His touch was sure, as if he knew every hidden desire I'd tried to ignore. "I've wanted this for so long," he murmured against my lips, his voice sending tremors through me. "Me too," I admitted, the words barely a whisper as his kisses trailed down my neck. The rest of the night blurred into a haze of passion and discovery, each touch more intoxicating than the last. He was everything I'd imagined. Attentive, skilled, relentless in his pursuit of my pleasure. It was like he'd unlocked something deep inside me, something I hadn't known was there. I surrendered completely, lost in the sensation. Afterward, lying beside him, my body still humming, emotions crashed over me. Guilt lingered at the edges, but it was drowned out by a fierce sense of satisfaction, of freedom. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive. "You okay?" Marcus asked softly, his eyes searching mine with concern. "I am," I answered, and for once I meant it. The next morning, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. "Mark." "Morning, babe," he said cheerfully when I answered. "You didn't stay out too late, right?" "No, not too late," I lied, glancing at Marcus, still asleep beside me. My voice was steady, but my heart pounded. "Great. I made coffee." "See you when you get back," Mark said before hanging up. I stared at the phone, the weight of what I'd done pressing down on me. But when I looked back at Marcus, his peaceful expression, the steady rise and fall of his chest, I felt a strange mix of guilt and fulfillment. I slipped out quietly, promising to text him later. The drive home felt surreal. The streets were just waking up, sunlight spilling over them like an accusation. When I walked inside, Mark kissed my cheek, blissfully unaware of where I'd really been. I forced a smile, determined to pretend everything was normal. But nothing was normal anymore. In the days that followed, I threw myself into routine, playing the part of the dutiful wife, but my mind was elsewhere. On Marcus, his touch, his smile, the way he made me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. I hadn't experienced that kind of intensity in ages. Before long, I was messaging him again. One text led to another, and soon we were seeing each other frequently. We took precautions, always picking distant locations where we wouldn't run into anyone familiar. He respected my limits, never pushing too hard, yet always available when I reached out. The secrecy was exhilarating, but it also started wearing on me. Juggling two lives drained me, and I found myself lying more than I ever imagined possible. "Where were you?" Mark asked one night when I returned later than usual. "Traffic," I answered smoothly, plastering on a smile. "You know how it gets." He nodded, accepting my excuse without question, but each deception felt like a tiny stab to my conscience. Guilt lingered constantly, a faint voice in the back of my head. Yet, whenever I considered ending things with Marcus, the memory of his touch, his fire, pulled me back under. "You're addictive," I told him one evening as we lay entwined in yet another motel room. "You're worth it," he murmured, his fingers tracing slow circles along my back. Amid it all, I wondered how long I could keep up this charade. Would I eventually slip up? Would Mark notice the shifts in me? The sudden bursts of joy? The newfound confidence? Still, I couldn't stop. Marcus had stirred something in me, a part of myself I hadn't realized was dormant. If you've made it this far, thank you for sticking with me. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more raw, real-life stories. Things are about to get even messier, so stay tuned. The first near miss should have been a warning. It began like any other rendezvous. We'd picked a boutique hotel a few towns over. I told Mark I was meeting a coworker for a project, even bringing my laptop to sell the lie. "Don't stay out too late," Mark said as I kissed him goodbye. "You've been working so hard lately." I nodded, a knot tightening in my throat. His kindness made the deceit cut deeper. The hotel was ideal. Secluded, Quiet, just upscale enough to ease my guilt. Marcus was already there when I arrived, his pull as undeniable as ever. "You're a sight for sore eyes," he said, drawing me into a kiss the moment we were inside. The hours melted away in a haze of passion and laughter, making me forget the life I'd left behind. But as sunset approached, reality barged back in. "I should go," I said, reluctantly untangling myself from Marcus's arms. "Stay a little longer," he whispered, his lips grazing my neck. "I can't," I insisted, even as my willpower wavered. Driving home, my mind replayed the day, euphoria and guilt churning inside me. I was so lost in thought that I nearly missed the car tailing me. It wasn't until I turned into my neighborhood and saw the headlights mirror my movements that alarm bells rang. My pulse skyrocketed as I pulled into the driveway, watching the car slow before speeding off. Coincidence? Or had someone been following me? Inside, Mark was cooking dinner. "You're back earlier than I expected," he remarked, glancing at the clock. "Yeah, we finished up fast," I lied, setting my bag down with forced calm. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Did you make it home safe?" I silenced it instantly, hands shaking. "What's wrong?" Mark asked, noticing my tension. "Nothing," I said, grabbing a glass of water to steady myself. "Just tired." That night, sleep eluded me. The car, the text, the lies, they gnawed at me, feeding a growing paranoia. Had Mark noticed something? Was that car just a stranger or something more sinister? The next morning, I woke to find Mark studying me, an odd expression on his face. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Of course." I laughed nervously. "Why wouldn't I be?" "You've just seemed different lately," he said, brow furrowed. Distracted. My stomach lurched, but I recovered quickly. "Work's been stressful," I offered, praying he'd drop it. He nodded, but the doubt in his eyes told me he wasn't fully convinced. I tried to pull away from Marcus after that scare, but it was harder than I'd imagined. Every time I attempted to end things, he'd remind me of how right we were together, how electrifying it felt to be with him. "You're overthinking," he said during one call. "No one suspects a thing." But I wasn't so sure. The paranoia clung to me, making me jump at shadows, obsessively checking my phone, second-guessing every move. In the next chapter, I'll share how I finally tried to take control. Or so I thought. But nothing went as planned, and the web of lies I'd built began unraveling. The unease from that close call never fully faded, though I learned to cope. Marcus and I grew even more cautious, selecting meeting spots with care, switching to a secure messaging app. Yet, no matter how careful we were, the lies grew heavier. During dinners with Mark, I'd catch myself staring, wondering if he could see through me, if he already knew the truth and was just waiting for me to crack. One evening, as we sat watching a movie, he suddenly hit pause. "Is everything okay with us?" he asked, his voice calm but probing. I froze, heart hammering. "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "Why do you ask?" "You've just been distant," he replied, eyes searching mine. His words cut through me like a knife. Here was the man who had loved me without conditions, supported me through everything, and I was stabbing him in the back in the most terrible way possible. "I'm fine," I murmured, taking his hand. "Really?" But even as I spoke, I knew it was another lie. When I next met Marcus, the guilt had become unbearable. "We need to talk," I blurted the moment I stepped into the hotel room. His smile faded. "That doesn't sound promising." "It's not," I admitted, perching nervously on the bed. "I can't keep this up." He sat beside me, his face impossible to read. "Why now?" "Because it's wrong. To Mark, to you, to me," I said, my voice shaking. "This was never supposed to get so serious." Marcus exhaled slowly, staring at the floor. "I knew this would happen eventually," he said quietly. "Doesn't make it hurt any less." "I'm sorry," I whispered, tears burning my eyes. He reached out, gently wiping one away. "Don't be." What we had mattered, even if it couldn't last. Leaving Marcus tore me apart, but it was the beginning of fixing my life. At home, I poured myself into my marriage, scheduling romantic evenings, preparing Mark's favorite dishes, actually listening when he talked about his day. For a while, it helped. The gap between us narrowed, and I started feeling close to him again, but the guilt never fully left. One night, alone in our bedroom, I finally wrote everything down. Not to confess to Mark or anyone else, but just to free myself from the weight of all these secrets. And that's why you're hearing this now. To everyone listening, I'm not sharing this to make excuses or ask for sympathy. What I did was wrong, and I'll carry that forever. But I also know I'm not the only one who's been here.